Kiran, working as a requirement analyst for ACS Xerox company. And I have been working. I mean, this is my what else I can like.
So what is your project about? Is this your
Oh,
first project?
I'm working for the Department of Education, basically working on like their project on federal student loan. This is my first project after taking this class. Before that, I was working as a business and planning analyst for 5 years, and that's about it. I took this project in August, and yep, that's it.
And what kind of requirement documents are you doing in your current job?
Okay, for this job, we have like on the floor where I work, we have a lot of BAs, around like 20 BAs, and we have that many BAs because we have a lot of projects going on. I would say around like 15 or 20 projects currently going on. So my day-to-day thing is basically I work on several CCRs. That's the first thing. What I do is when they open the CCR, it's only like one line of requirement I get that I have to work on some sort of enhancement or new thing is working on. Based on that, I conduct chat session, create impact analysis document, and from there, then we go on creating BRDs, high level BRD, RSD, requirement specification document. Um, After that, design document. One is high level design document, then detailed design document, which is a little bit technical. So I have to work with developer to create that document. Um, and I think that's about it. And let me see what else if I'm missing anything. Yeah, pretty much that's it.
What was one of your biggest challenges starting a job because you were in a different domain entirely,
Okay.
banking industry,
Uh-huh.
moving into a BA job? What was the biggest challenge and what did you do to overcome that and move on?
They use ACS use a lot of acronyms. Like there are a lot of things that I still cannot like I cannot understand what it means. Um, so what I did, I had to always go back and forth with other VAs or other people who have been working with the same company since long time and find out the meaning of that. And ultimately, what they did, they just ended up creating a big document with all acronyms and the meaning of that, and then they just provided to all VAs.
Just for you?
It started with me and the other VAs who
Okay.
joined. So,
So look here, a persistent BA. All right, I'll give the floor to you guys. Folks on the phone, if you have any questions for her, please shoot out. No question.
We don't really have any questions right now.
Okay. How about somebody else or anyone from Chicago?
Oh, here's a question.
Srinivas, I have one question from one of the participants.
Sure, please.
How many interview rounds you had, and how was the interview process?
uh, asking me or
Yeah, you.
okay, I had my first interview. It was a phone interview from the vendor. Then the second interview, and that was my last interview with the director of their program, requirements analyst program. And that interview was almost like 30 minutes long. I would say it wasn't that hard. It was hard to understand what they are trying to say because everything was new. Whatever the new implementation they had going on, so he was just trying to give me the information, and I didn't know what he was talking about. So I had to honestly, I had to jump into like I had to proactively just say like what I was working on because he wasn't asking that many questions. So that was my challenge in the interview that he wasn't really asking me that many questions, and I was really freaking out.
Maybe you were already hired.
I don't know. So, but I would say usually they ask for like your experience, what tools you have been using, specifically how you were using that, and they focus more into like my interview was focused more into behavior type of questions they were asking, like how you manage to do this thing, how you deal with these people, how you deal with that people, how you work in the team environment, all that sorts of sort of question like and on the chat session also how you gather your requirements, what you focus on, what type of questions you ask for. So I think they focus more into that than into any technical thing or how you write the requirements, like not how but like in what way, in what format you write requirements. They were not worried too much about it, but they were worried about how you write it and how you elaborate any particular issue or problem.
Okay, let's take a question from here. Anyone in the classroom?
I use RecPro, ClearCase, ClearQuest. Um, we have SharePoint. SharePoint, we just started using it a month ago. Before that, we had Welcome Home. And Word, I use it all the time just to write my simple requirements and then only I just put it. But basically, we have the template for everything. Even though it's like meeting minutes, we have the template for each and every task. So these tools I'm using. We are not using doors.
Yeah, I have a question. Are they asking more from your resume, or are they asking more technical stuff, how much you know?
For my interview, they didn't focus too much into technical part. And since I don't have technical background either, they focus more into. I'm sorry, what was your question again? Focus on what?
Was focus more on your resume or technical BA skills in general?
No, you know what? They did not even. I mean, did not ask me anything from my resume. I would say they look into overall how I work, what my working style is. So it wasn't really, he wasn't really looking, like he wasn't really picking it from my resume that I work on this project and tell me what you work on this project. So he really didn't do that.
But you mentioned that you were trying to
Yes,
relate it to your resume, giving
yes,
examples from your
that's right.
resume.
Yeah, that's right. Like while I was giving him my answer, I put everything in terms of example, like what I did in my previous project or in my previous job. I try to put everything in terms of like what I did and how I handle the issue by giving him the example. Instead of just vaguely telling him that I do this thing and I do that thing, instead of saying that, I just put like how I did it and what the issue was, and how I handled that issue.
And I think that's a very important point there, because even if the interviewer is not specifically focused on your resume, you want them to be focused on your resume. So regardless of what the question is coming from, or if it's a general question, try to relate it to a more practical example from your most recent project or the second project or something like that, and bring the focus back to your resume, because obviously when you're preparing for an interview, you know your resume best, and if it revolves around that, then it works to your advantage. So I think that was a very smart move to give more examples from your resume so that the next question can be leading from where you left off. Okay, any other questions from you?
My question is how much percentage of training you're
Okay.
using against your experience?
Okay. I would
You have
say,
some experience of analysis. That's
uh-huh.
what I understood.
Yeah. I would say this training was quite helpful for me because first of all it was a refresher, and the second thing is my previous job wasn't like, I was like not 100% BA. I wasn't working completely on like as a business analyst. I was involved as a planning analyst and little bit of business analyst and some other activities. This new project that I got, I'm working as a requirement analyst, and after this training, I mean, I got exposure of like writing the requirements and conducting JAT session. That was the main important thing. Business process flowchart diagram. So I'm using everything of it except some of the things that I don't require to do in my new project, like creating use cases. We don't have the use cases in this ACS project, but now I know what the use cases are. So sometimes what happened that if I'm creating RSD, and even though it's not required, it's not a formal document in ACS that I have to create all these use cases, but I do it, and that's a plus point for me because my hiring manager or the director, he gets impressed that I know how to do that stuff, and I'm putting it, even though it's not the formal document, but I'm putting it everything systematically. Did I answer your
Okay.
question?
Yeah, thanks, Kiran. Thank you so much.
Any other questions from you?
Then how long did you get placed after the training? I think it was like April, May I joined this one.
You joined the batch in May,
May,
and
I
then when did we
guess.
start marketing you?
I think around like June.
June. Okay.
Yeah, and I was hired on August 7th. I mean, my interview was 2 weeks before that, July end. That was my interview, and then I had to like, leave my previous job and then move into this. So August 9th was my joining date to this year. So I would say around like a couple of months after I finished the training, or maybe less than that.
Mickey, did you have a question?
Oh yeah, I interviewed with the CTA once, like for the business analyst position, and they said you need to interview for the with the project managers every time you need to work on a project. So is it the same thing with the ACS?
No, I would say ACS works a little bit differently because it's for the Department of Education. We have a lot of documentation even before the project starts. So even though I knew that this is what I'm working on for that project, I had like JAT sessions, couple of JAT sessions. Then I had my BRD, my RSD was complete. So almost like 60% of my documentation was done even before the project started. And at that point also, I didn't know that project was going to start or not, and I did not know who the project manager was. So after that, it was done when we sent out this documentation for approval and everything. Then the phase two started.
Yeah, I have a question actually. Since this course structure is based on the UML and some the UML related tools, Kiran, are you using any of these tools in your job?
You mean creating the use cases?
UML and use cases.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean whatever is the part of the course actually, because I'm just looking at the course structure. It tells about the UML tools, UML modeling and requirement management and all that.
I'm required
So,
to, yeah.
are you using any of these tools like software-wise, or are you using something else?
No, actually, I'm using all these tools. But the thing is, I would say uh, you have to have the knowledge of these tools even though you are using it or not, because that's a part of what BAs are expected to do. Even though for if I'm working on particular CCR and if I'm not required to do any design on that CCR, but I should know what it means and it's helpful for me when I'm writing the requirements, because that way I'm writing it correctly. So
No, my question is like we learn, we go through this training, we learn these tools, but
uh-huh.
on job, are we going to use something similar, or is there some different software,
No,
which
it
you're
will
using,
be
some different software tools you're using, which could be related in terms of in terms of how they're related to each other. But are those similar tools, or are you using something different? Would you like to tell us what if you're using something different than these tools?
no, I'm not
Because we
using
know
something
what else
very,
is there in the market.
yeah, I'm not using something totally different because I'm using like breakthrough, clear case. So I'm using all these tools, whatever it was taught in the class. The only one thing I'm using is a SharePoint. Uh, but again, it's not like very hard to learn how to use a SharePoint. It's very similar tool. So I'm using whatever tools they are teaching in the class. I'm using all these tools.
I'd like to add something there. And you will notice if you are applying for jobs, you'll notice that even though a company does not use formal UML or use cases, the methodology, the job description comes with the standard requirement of you need UML, you need use case. And the reason is uh, companies expect you to have this formal grounding of analysis techniques so that regardless of what your work product is, what your output is, you put a structured methodology into it. For instance, you're not missing any impacts when you're doing gap analysis. So it helps to get a functional hands-on experience with UML use cases regardless, because the industry is going to expect it, and second, it's going to give you the edge that your requirement gathering effort is more formal, and clearly you're not missing out on details as you go through the process. I just wanted to add that.
Okay, so thank you very much. Thanks.
Any other questions here?
This questioning harder than the
What
we thought for your interview.
Now here are the questions. I had no questions in the interview. That's the difference.
Thank you very much, Kiran, for your time. Okay, I'll attempt to answer that. The question here is she was placed in she had a background in banking, but she was placed in the Department of Education, so it's not a direct match. So how do you go about marketing yourself in other domains than what you have in your resume? So in general, you cannot carry every domain out there. And for a business analyst, the common thread is the analysis effort that goes into developing a project. So you will become a specialist as you work on multiple projects and as you gather more skills and domain knowledge from different projects. But as a BA, your primary strength is your skill set. And if you have prior domain experience, that comes in handy. It's definitely a plus if you have mortgage experience and if you're interviewing for a mortgage client, but that does not prevent you from going into healthcare. And in fact, I would say if you're as diverse and versatile as possible, it presents yourself as a much better marketable person as well. And Department of Education, it's kind of very niche market, so it's not that they'll interview only people with DOV experience because they won't find many candidates. So in general, if you stay with the primary domains, which is finance or healthcare, and you're able to articulate your current projects very well, then you're just trying to give them the confidence that you're able to understand a business process, propose a solution, and document it along the way. So they are not here to get an exact match. If there was, then it's a plus, absolutely, but it's not always necessary.